All right, so everybody that's listening, we have a very special guest, and this is going to be our show on women in sports. We're trying to kind of branch out to that because, in my mind, and a lot of the women that we've interviewed that have played athletics, that are playing athletics right now, they have really been torn apart with the issue that we won't go in too deep into anything political because we do want to hear this interview in general, but there's a lot of women that are kind of getting screwed in some women's sports issues. So we'll leave that there. But I do want to bring on my guest here. For people listening to us on the podcasting sites and watching us, we thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, share this interview. For people that are listening to us on one of the 20 radio stations around the country, extremely grateful you're doing that. Please keep up the word and get that out to people that you're listening to our program, whatever time, whatever radio station is. And thank you again for that. We really appreciate that. Morgan Walsh, head coach, Bryant Women's Bowling, Bryant University. It's over in Smithfield, Rhode Island. Definitely check out the school. It's really an up and coming school in academics, in athletics. The list goes on and on. I've been there many times, but she just took over this team, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Morgan, back in 2022, where it became a varsity sport now. So this is a Division I sport now, and Morgan is leading the charge with the women on the team, and they're kicking ass and taking no prisoners. And Morgan, thanks so much for coming on and talking to us about the Bryant University women's bowling team.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much. So just starting off, a little bit about you for the audience, whether they're listening or watching this on the computer screen. What makes a good bowler? Because a lot of people look at bowling as like a fun sport. It's a date night. It's a night out in general. But there's, for the most people that doing that, they're not that good. But you, and we're going to talk about your career in bowling in college where you really kick some butt. But I want you to tell the audience to start off what makes a good bowler.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of athleticism involved in bowling. A lot of people seem to thrive pretty well who have played other sports as well, particularly, other rotational sports like softball, baseball, stuff like that, tend to thrive pretty well in bowling. I train just as much as other athletes do. My kids train the same way too. It involves a lot of lower body strength, core strength. There's always, because it is more of a game than it is a sport, there's always luck involved as well. So, always a little bit of a luck factor to it. But, I think that consistency with bowling is really important. Especially, there's different oil patterns that get put on the lane. Particularly like we, from an NCAA perspective, bowl on specific patterns that are regulated by the NCAA. So, being able to hit the same mark over and over again is super important. I really think that bowling doesn't get enough credit for as much athleticism as needed. Because if you think about it, it really is kind of doing, lunges after lunges, when you're really athletic and being in that stance. So, you need a fair amount to be able to do that. But, I think consistency is the most important for bowling for sure.
So before we get into your career in New York and, just being as great as you were in college, let's talk about growing up. Was it really your sport growing up? Was it something that came about maybe in high school or later on in life? How did all this come about as far as your love for bowling?
Yeah, so I grew up in a bowling family. My
Okay.
parents actually met in a bowling center. Um, so before I was born, my dad bowled professionally. He also manages a pro shop, so it's kind of in my blood. When I was younger, I didn't really like it. I liked dance more, so I was always a competitive dancer as well. That was something I, was more passionate about. Bowling, I had to really practice at. It was not something that came naturally to me. So it was always frustrating to me when I was a kid because everybody else in my family was really talented at it. And I wasn't. So, it came down to kind of when I was in high school, my parents kind of said, like, you have to pick one of the other. You have to either at this point choose bowling or you have to choose dance. So, I decided that bowling was more of the route, because being in the dance industry is really hard. It's something that, it's few pickings within that. And as I got older, I started to get more talented at bowling. I'm left-handed too, which is sometimes people say is an advantage with bowling. So there were definitely some opportunities for me on the collegiate level. So I've bowled my entire life, but I really started to take it seriously, later on in life and start to really love it.
Just talk about your bowling career, because as we stated on a couple of times, and I'm not trying to be a fanboy here, but we are trying to tell the truth here on the broadcast that you did really crush it in college. Talk about that journey throughout college and how you really got better as the years progressed.
Yeah, so my freshman year, I started Division 1. I went to Fairleigh Dickinson, and it was a bit of a culture shock for me. I wasn't ever planning on playing Division 1 sports. I was planning on bowling college, but I didn't think that I was good enough to be able to be on the D1 level. And I was recruited to go, so it was definitely a bit of a culture shock for me at first. My first semester freshman year, I didn't bowl a lot, and when I did, I really kind of struggled. But I went home in between first semester and second semester, and I really, worked my ass off at it. I put a ton of time on the lanes. I followed the packets we were given. Was in the gym. I did all the things, and second semester really paid off. And I was able to make the all rookie team for the NEC, which was really cool. And then from there, I think I really kind of saw like, man, I'm capable of doing this. So I put in a lot of time. Like I said, it doesn't come natural to me. If I don't practice for a while, you'll be able to tell. So I had to work twice as hard, I think, as everybody else did, which kind of instilled in me, a good work ethic. And that kind of led to my success, is that I just was always the last one done on the lanes. I was always there putting in extra time, extra time in the gym, whatever I needed to kind of elevate myself.
So then you jumped into coaching after that at your former school. Talk a little bit about that and coaching girls that, you were on that team, you were in that position at that same school. Was that kind of a shock when you got that job and started working there because you were already in college there and then you're going to coaching at the same school?
Yeah, it was a little bit of an interesting dynamic. I kind of had to shift my thought process as far as like these people aren't my friends anymore. I have to take more of a coaching, more of a leadership role in that aspect. I think because of the relationship I had with the coach at Medaille, like he's my dad. So, there was always a little bit of a different dynamic between the two of us anyways. We kind of would talk things out as far as coach and player level. So it wasn't too big of a transition. More so, I think that I just had to separate myself as far as, being from a leadership perspective now, as opposed to always just friend, if that makes sense.
Well, it's not even the girls. If it's your dad too, you have to know where the line is. And obviously he has to know where the line is too, that, this is my daughter. She played really well in college, but now it's like another dynamic of the relationship of we have to coexist together at a coaching level at a job. So did
Yep.
that play out fairly well? Because obviously you have a good relationship with your dad. You've been, with him your whole life. He grew you up. So was it fairly well, or was there growing pains there? How did that all play out?
Yeah, so I think there were some growing pains. I think the growing pains started even just from when I joined the team as a player. I remember the first tournament of the year, we got into like a screaming match and everyone else was like, whoa, I can't talk to coach like that. Like the two of us, we had a different dynamic level of how we would talk to each other. And everyone else was like, I can't do that. So, we had to step back a little bit in how we communicated to each other. Because he's coached me my entire life too, I understood how he coached. And a lot of what I do now is, copy paste of what he does. So, I think once we figured that dynamic out, we were pretty good as far as we see lane ball motion and certain things the same way. So I think coaching wise, it was a little bit easier than it was for my initial arrival on the team.
I just want to recap for people that are just tuning in, whether it's on the radio or the podcasting sites. Again, Morgan Walsh, she is the head coach at Bryant University women's bowling team. Definitely check out the team. We're going to go into where you can find more information about the team if you want to go and watch them. The list goes on and on. We're going to get to that a little bit towards the end of the interview. I do want to talk about Bryant because obviously I like the school. I'm originally from Rhode Island. I moved to Florida, did my college there, lived down there for a while. I go back and forth now to Rhode Island and Florida. And it's a good school, nice small school, Bryant University, I'm talking about. And I enjoy walking around there in the summer because it's a lot
Mhm.
warmer than the winter. And seeing the scenery, the ducks, and the little pond there. It's nice and beautiful school in general. But what made you want to choose Bryant? Because you were from New York. Did you already have some sort of ties with Bryant? Plus, this team is just kind of taken off last year. You're still in kind of the infancy period of this program, and you're leading a team that we'll go into that in just a second. That I'm sure it's tough from, a lot of the growing pains of starting a program basically by yourself. This is the second year in.
Yeah, so I don't actually have any ties to Rhode Island. Again, I'm born and raised in Buffalo.
Right.
So when I finished my degree, I was teaching. So I have a teaching degree. I was teaching kindergarten, right
Oh,
around the
right.
time of COVID, the aftermath of that. And then I was coaching at Medaille at the same time.
Wow.
And it was really frustrating because I didn't have a lot of time for bowling personally. I was putting all my time and energy into these two things, and it was actually my husband who found the position for me. It was like, hey, maybe you should apply for this. And at the time, again, bowling was not anything at Bryant. It used to be a club team. Back in the 80s, there was a men's club team. I believe a couple women did compete on the team as well, for a while, but this was the first time it would ever be, considered as an NCAA sport at Bryant. They added us, they added women's rowing, and they added women's golf at the same time as well. So, I'm familiar with the conference that we were in originally, the NEC. Obviously, that's where I bowled out of, for a couple of years. So I was pretty familiar as far as the dynamic goes. So I was like, well, I got, nothing to lose at this point. I might as well apply. And then, they flew me out over the summer for a second interview. And I got the job there, which was obviously, crazy that, what are we going to do? Are we going to pick up and move? It was just me and my husband. And he was like, yeah, like, let's do it. Why not? So we've always loved Rhode Island. We've been there a couple times to vacation. So, we were a fan of New England. So it was definitely tough originally because I basically was starting from absolutely nothing. It was a lot of relying on some coaches I'd known just from being a player over the years. Calling, making phone calls, just trying to see where to start. I moved there in 2021, so I spent the 2021-2022 season just recruiting. And then our past year, the 22-23, was our first inaugural year. So I started the program with 7 freshmen.
So let's talk about that because obviously you were coaching with your dad. You did get this position. I mean, you're the head woman in charge in this position. There's no going to your dad and going back and forth with him. Much love for him, but still, this is you're in the big time now. How did that conversation go where you said, hey, I got this job? Was there, did he say, hey, get out the door and go and take that job and run with it? Or was there kind of thoughts of maybe we should stay here and keep this going with the relationship you guys have had, recruiting these girls and making such a great team at Mackay?
Yeah, it was definitely tough. Again, because we had such a good dynamic working at Medaille. He had been a part of the program even before I was there. He was there for 6 years. So,
Yeah.
he had really built the program and established it there. But he was really supportive of me, and wanting to really kind of take this. It wasn't something I had ever considered to do. I wanted to try to combine my love for teaching and bowling together. I just didn't know how. And when the position, came about, I was like, oh, I had actually never thought about, continuing in that realm other than just, coaching on the side with him as a part-time job. But it definitely was, a different dynamic. He has a different program now. He's at Niagara University. So he has his own Division I program. So the rules have kind of switched now where, he went from D3 to D1. So there's some different rules with that. So he calls me now and he's like, hey, how do I do an official visit? What do I do with these things? So, we still have really good relationship as far as, open communication, and, we tend to recruit the same kids. So that provides a different dynamic as well. So, the overall, we're just trying to better the sport, I think, for our athletes. So, we have a good relationship still, which is
You guys go against each other
we
sometimes.
do. We
The
do.
question
Yep.
is, who's winning that recruiting battle so far for the people listening and viewing this?
Recruiting, I don't know. I think we're pretty even. I think we,
Okay.
I've got a couple kids from him. He's got a couple from me. So I think we're pretty tied right now.
All right, fair enough. How does the transfer portal play with bowling? Is that a big issue? Because obviously it's a very big issue with other sports. We see this in basketball and football specifically, and obviously the other sports too, volleyball, soccer, the list goes on and on, baseball. Is it a big thing in bowling, or are you getting a lot of these women that are, they commit to Bryant? I'm sure a couple will transfer, but the majority of your core group, and they're going to stay there for those 4 years.
Yeah, I haven't had any currently of my members that have entered the transfer portal.
Okay.
My core six that started the program, they're very tight knit, and I think that they're very determined to see it through the 4 years. Obviously, some things will happen, but they're really proud of the fact that they're the founding class of the program. So I think that that's good that they helps take some ownership there. When I was somebody that transferred, and the transfer portal was not something that was really a thing when I did that. So I think it's kind of created some different issues, some good, some bad. It's allowed for people to have more flexibility in getting to the programs that are better for them or right for them. We now, with the new rules where there's kind of a window of time where they're allowed to be active in the transfer portal is interesting. I believe it's like after our championship segment is when they're allowed to enter and like talk to us. So that's kind of create a little bit of a different dynamic as well. I'm definitely somebody that's still learning the transfer portal. It's interesting because we have NCAA bowling, but there's also USBC collegiate, and then NAIA, obviously. So there's some new rules as far as like transferring amongst them. A kid from USBC used to have to sit a year in order to transfer into NCAA. Those rules don't really apply anymore. So it's very fluid, very similar to other sports where I think everybody's still trying to learn, the right way to kind of handle it. But no, I think the portal's a good thing. I think if it's something that I wish I would have had, when I transferred for sure.
So obviously you have the core six that you said that are probably there, 99% there for the 4 years in general. Talk about selling this program to new recruits. Do you sell it that, like you did to these core six, that, hey, this is a new program, you can make your name here, or we're starting out, you can be like one of the starting group of, the 4 years here, that, we're in year two, you can be in part, part of that. So, or are you selling this program different? Is it hard to sell the program or easy to sell it? I'm just trying to figure this out too.
Yeah, so as of right now, I definitely feel like I still have been using that as far as, our pitch for the program is that we're young and that, that we don't have any of these big, traditions set up or these major things that we've been doing the exact same thing for many, many years. And that's just how we do it. I, in general, like to evolve as a coach. We're always trying different things. If something works, it doesn't work, why keep doing it? So that's just my general philosophy as a coach. And I think with a new program, that allows for that to be even more flexible. It is something that I definitely still pitch because we are a smaller, younger team, that, there's not huge age gaps as far as my current core six, versus the ones coming in. So definitely my verbiage will have to change eventually, especially as we get more established, so that'll be, a bit of a challenge for me as a coach coming up. But, I think it just proves that a way of looking at it that I will in the future is like you have a core six that have started a program together and they have knowledge that other teams don't have, so they're willing to give you that knowledge, and help create and continue the Bryant legacy for sure.
Morgan, are you leaning on any of the other coaches for any of the other sports at Bryant University? Maybe they've been at Bryant for quite a long time and they give you some tips and tricks of how to, and obviously every sport is different, but how to finagle transfer portal or this and that and the other thing to do with college athletics, because it is only a second year really in Division I.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had to rely a lot on actually our women's rowing coach when she was hired at the same time as I was. She had some more experience for sure than I did. And her and I shared an office for our first year. So I relied heavily on her. Steph Ricker, she's amazing. She has mentored me in so many ways. There's so many things that I didn't know that she really helped me with. But all the coaches at Bryant have been super supportive. Mitch with track and field, I rely on him as well. Our swim and dive coach as well. Everybody has been really supportive. But I would say in general at Bryant, you reach out to any coach and they're willing to help you, which is great. So I've had a very good support system. Everybody understands the position that I was in as far as, a younger person in a brand new position, having to learn the mechanics of Division 1, which is great. So
Talk about your age, because obviously you are younger than a lot of these coaches that, whatever sport it may be. Do you think that's an asset for you to be younger and that you can kind of relate because you haven't been out of the game that long with these girls coming in? You know how it is in college recently. It's not like you're 20 years out. You know what goes on at these colleges. Again, you're not an old fogey that doesn't know the music, the times we're in, all that list. So does you feel like that helps you? Whereas, there's an older coach rather recruiting, he might have a tougher time than somebody like you that's, I would say, more younger and hip to what's going on at the colleges.
yeah, I've only been out of this since 2019, which is not that long
Oh,
of a
wow.
time.
Okay.
So yeah, my last year of bowling college was 2019. So, right before COVID. So, I think that it does help me. I look like I'm on the team half the time, which is sometimes, a tough part. I think is that people are like, "Where's the coach? I don't know where she is." But that's probably the toughest part. But as
Yeah.
far as connecting with the kids, I think it's been a bit of advantage for me for sure. Especially last year, I had to almost take coach slash upperclassmen at the same time because they were all freshmen, so they didn't have anybody to be able to tell them, this is how we do things, these are how things kind of work as far as how the mechanics of bowling in college work. And, the left lane starts the match and all these little things, I had to kind of take that role too. So, I really bonded with my core six for sure as far as having to sometimes step back as a coach and give the talks of, fighting through the mental game. And 1 second, there we go. So, there were some challenges with that as far as finding a line of, when do I need to be coach here? And when do I need to play, upperclassmen, older siblings sometimes. So I think that's a challenge for me in general is finding that line because I do understand them. I'm not that much older than them. So, I sometimes struggle with it, but I think overall from a recruiting standpoint, I think it helps me. I think that kids in general feel a little more at home when they're closer in age with somebody that gets it, somebody that went through it, as opposed to somebody that's been out of it for a while. I regularly compete myself still. I compete on the National Women's Tour, the PWBA. So I get it. I get what it's like to still be competing out there. So I think it does kind of give me an advantage for sure.
Again, for people listening, again, this is Morgan Walsh. She is the head coach at Bryant University's women's bowling team. Definitely check that out. In general, we're going to just kind of wind down for the last few questions or so. And then we do want to get into where people can catch the games, go and find you guys in general online. And the list goes on and on for that. Let's talk about the team this year, 10-23. Still some growing pains, but obviously the program is still in the second year, and you guys do have some big tournaments still to go. Talk about the team this year and how you feel like it's faring out.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely see with my core group that there's definitely been growth. They get it. They're starting to get it. My approach last year was definitely to try to get our feet wet. We went to maybe some, smaller tournaments, a little bit easier tournaments. And this year, I've definitely thrown them to the wolves for sure. The last tournament we were at was 22 teams. And of that, I think, over 17 of them were ranked top 20, 30 in the country. That's how they're going to learn is to just be watching and being around the best of the best. They elevated themselves. One of our players, Olivia Hillman, she had the front 10, so she had 10 strikes in a row. She shot 290, against a top 25 team in the country. they're learning. That's how they get better. That's the approach I've taken this year. I think it's benefited. Some of those teams, obviously, the Vanderbilts, Nebraskas, those are going to be tough to beat off for sure. But my kids love it. I think that they love being able to compete at that higher level. And it really elevates us for the time that we get to conference. We're the team that's out there competing against these really tough teams. So, when they get to conference, they're ready, they're seasoned, they're at it. So we definitely took more of a hands-on approach this year. And my 3 freshmen that came in, they really, they meshed right into it, which is great. In general, they have a great dynamic as far as, team compatibility, team dynamic. We preach open communication a lot, which is great. We're able to work through some things, that sometimes are tough to talk about. I think the hardest thing about coaching, on a women's level is that you have to be able to have that open communication and be able to talk through things as they come, as opposed to, well, this person said this, and then I'm going to tell 15 people, and then the story's going to change, and then it might get back to the original person. We've tried very hard to kind of, nip that in the bud on this team, which is great. And they really buy into that. So I think it helps them mesh well on the lanes too, because of it. But I'm super hopeful by the time we get to conference, and into second semester now that they're going to be ready, which is great.
Can you talk about some of the ladies on the team, for obviously people that are listening to this, whether it's in Rhode Island, around the country, as far as the podcasting too, because some of these people may not know a lot of the ladies on the team.
Yeah, so most of our kids are from the Northeast. As far as local to Rhode Island, I only have 2 that are pretty close. Olivia Hillman is in Massachusetts. She's from Attleboro, so she's not far. And then Hayden Smith is from Connecticut. She's from New Milford. So those are probably our closest overall. Everybody else, Ab Unson, they're from Rochester, so close to me, which was a great, recruiting tool, was to be able to say, hey, I'm from Buffalo. I get it. I understand what it's like to go far away. So Jen is from Little Falls area, which is in upstate New York. And then the rest of them are from like New Jersey, Long Island, Staten Island area. So we keep our team, pretty close to the Northeast, which they all can kind of relate to each other a little more on that level.
Yeah, sorry to interject. That's what I was going to say. You're mostly looking at women in the Northeast then, pretty much.
Yeah, I definitely, we've had some more recruits as of recently, from Texas, from a bunch of different places. So, I'm never one to be like, oh, I only want to recruit from this one area by any means. But it's definitely a draw to be only like 3 hours away from home. It makes it a little bit easier. So, we tend to get the kids from that area to be able to come to Bryant for sure.
Morgan, what is a hotbed for bowling in the U.S. as far as like, in general, recruiting wise, maybe professional wise? Where do you feel like that is?
Yeah, I would say the Midwest. So Michigan, Ohio, there's a lot of good bowlers from that area. There are a lot in the Northeast too, particularly, in upstate New York, as you get closer to New Jersey, Long Island, there's lots of good bowling in that area as well. Even New England, there's lots of good bowling in New England too. I think it's pretty popular, more so the Midwest into the Northeast for sure. But even some into Florida in the South as well. There's lots of good bowling too. California, there's a fair amount of good bowling out there as well too.
Oh, wow. I never heard Florida, but I trust you. I trust your judgment for sure, more so than mine. But just kind of finishing with the last 3 questions on this, and I do appreciate your time, Morgan. So, just speaking about, and looking at your schedule online, you guys are bowling all the way into March, obviously, and then God knows what's going to happen after that.
Yeah.
But with that said, it's like an all year round deal. You look at basketball or football or, baseball. Yeah, they train, but it's not a full all round, where they're playing games, I should say. So with that said, how are the girls handling that? Because you got some girls coming in that are freshmen, and if they're coming in as freshmen, maybe they're used to training all that time, but they're not used to, playing really high level talent at these schools like they are consistently from the start of school all the way until, the end of March, April.
Yeah, it's definitely an adjustment for sure. Especially from if you bowl in high school, a lot of times it's like, you know, sometimes December, January, February, and then that's kind of it. So it's a bit of an adjustment to start from, October 1 all the way, even into April if you make the tournament.
Right.
So, we start small usually. September obviously is preseason, so we can do some preseason stuff. Kind of get their feet wet with, the 8 hours a week. And then we kind of the first couple weeks, usually in October, we take it pretty slow, just kind of getting into we'll start with the gym maybe 2 days a week, and then we'll add the third day. We'll go from maybe 4 days a week of practice into fifth. So I try to make it, as much of a scaffolding of a period of time as possible. So it's not just like full throttle and get overwhelmed. And I think that helps them a little bit. Again, I think having the core six that have gone through it already, they were very supportive as well as in getting our three acclimated pretty quickly. And again, I've done this and I'm not that far out of it. So I understand the challenges of, being overwhelmed with school and overwhelmed with classes and also having practice and all of this. So there are times where sometimes I'm like, I can read the room. I can tell when they're struggling, when they're having a hard time. And I'd rather them be fully committed and, take a day and say, all right, today I want you to have a mental health day and we'll get back at it tomorrow. And I think being able to say those things as a coach allows them to be more present in the time where we do practice. So I think that helps too.
Because Bryant isn't some like kiddie college school. I mean, this is some tough stuff going on there.
Oh, yeah.
It's a tough school. So between that and training and, being in season pretty much from September till March, as you stated, that could wear somebody really down hard if they're
Oh,
not
for sure.
really, showing some time management skills.
Yeah, for sure. And, I'll give it up to our, academic advising team for athletics as well. They're fantastic, as far as helping these kids with this transition. Without it really takes a village, and it does so even as from an NCAA, Division I level, as it takes a village to make sure that these kids are getting through and getting the help that they need. So, I meet with my kids individually too. We do every other week. I meet with them and I just touch base with them and make sure that they're doing well. Because I have a smaller team, it allows me to have that flexibility. But I think any sort of one-on-one time I can give them to make sure that they have the space to say when they're struggling, they're more willing to do it as opposed to, we get to this time of year and then they say, oh, I'm struggling in this class. I don't know what to do. We can nip in the bud early and be proactive instead of reactive, which is good.
Let's talk about in January. Obviously, you're on a little bit of a hiatus right now until January. And then you do have that Northeast Classic coming up. Talk about what's going to go on there. Is that a really tough tournament? Is that a more of a moderate tournament? And just go a little bit in depth for people listening and viewing this.
Yeah, so the Northeast Classic is the biggest tournament of the year in NCAA bowling. There are 35 teams currently signed up, which is huge. So the uniqueness of NCAA bowling is we compete against Division I, Division II, and Division III all at the same time. So it kind of, allows that uniqueness of we get to see a bunch of different teams, which is great. There are plenty of D2, D3 teams that are amazing. And, it doesn't allow, bowling allows for that kind of, those lines to be blurred a little bit, which is great. I love it. But that tournament is really tough. And I think overall, our goal with that one is to catch some head-to-head wins, against some nationally ranked teams. Excuse me. It allows them, to help our ranking overall, become a ranked team is to beat nationally ranked teams, which is great. And for those that don't know, the NTCA, which is the National 10-Pin Coaches Association, they do a ranking every so often, usually every couple of months, that they rank the teams, all of the NCAA teams. There's also a D2, D3 poll, but they do a top 25 in the country. And our overall goal is to get on that list. So in order to do that, you go to the top tournaments, your strength of schedule is better, and you beat those teams, which overall we have triple the amount of head-to-head, nationally ranked wins than we did last year, which is the goal. So to keep doing that, catch a couple good teams, finish middle of the pack even is fantastic. That's my goal is really, as long as they're learning, that's what I want out of that for sure.
Last question. I do appreciate all your time you've given us and the viewers and listeners today. with that final question, how do people follow the team, whether it's online or in person? Of course, if people want to go and watch you guys bowl, is there an option for that? Just tell all the viewers and listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah, so most of our tournaments of the year are free. The bowling center should be posted, or at least where we are, should be posted at least on our website as far as the city that we'll be in. Most of them are free. Again, at ECC Championships, there's usually a charge to get in, but we also stream live on Facebook for most of our tournaments. Otherwise, they're being streamed on Bowl TV. So you can go to Bowl TV, bowl.com and go follow the link for that as well. But most of them are on Facebook. So I have, the camera, the iPad I bring with me, and we stream everything. So that's the best way, I think, to watch us. You can follow us on Instagram at Bryant Bull too. We're always posting fun things. There's making reels at practice, doing all the fun things. So if you want to see what we're doing there, my kids love having fun at practice as far as the social media side of it. So we do like trick shot Tuesdays and all those fun things too. So definitely follow us there. There's always fun stuff going on there as well.
All right. Well, thanks so much. And it is on Facebook. It's Bryant Women's Bowling. Is that what it is? Or?
I think it is. Yeah, I believe it's Bryant University Women's Bowling or
Bryant
Bryant Women's Bowling, one of the two.
Again, Morgan Walsh here on Fire Breathing Rob. She is the Bryant University women's bowling coach, and we hope to have her on again. She's doing a heck of a job, and we hope to keep supporting you and the team in general. Maybe we can get one of the girls on one of these days and have her talk about her journey on the team. But we do hope to keep in touch with you, Morgan, and keep up the great work in supporting these girls and also supporting Bryant University.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you again for having me.